Welcome to End Times Examined. We're going to be looking at part 2 in our series titled Bible Prophecy and the New World Order, Rise of Antichrist Kingdom. Now I know what some of you are thinking, oh great, another New World Order video. And you're right, it is. And as a lot of you know, there is a glut of information on this topic, much of which is sensationalized. I don't intend to do that here. I believe the information that we'll be examining is compelling enough on its own to not have to do that. This video series is a broad overview of the concepts of the one world globalist system, commonly referred to as the New World Order. We will be looking at it in the light of Bible prophecy, particularly Revelation chapter 13. Once again, this is not a comprehensive study of the New World Order. There are many channels and videos that go into great detail about the individual subjects covered here, and Lord willing, we may do that someday as well. But I'm sure there's some of you who have never seen this information put together in an easy-to-understand and digest format. And if you're an armchair researcher like me, you've discovered bits and pieces here and there but never seen it put together in one place. So while this is a good beginning point for those of you who are new to this topic, there is still, I believe, plenty of information you may not know and can learn and benefit from. One last thing before we get started, I am not a date setter when it comes to Bible prophecy, nor do I know exactly how future prophecies in the Bible will be fulfilled. In fact, that's one of the many things that distinguishes prophecy is that it can only be fully understood in the light of its fulfillment. If you need evidence of this, then I encourage you to go back and watch part 1 of this series. However, there are things happening in our world today and throughout history which directly and indirectly correspond to the events prophesied in Revelation and may or could be a partial fulfillment of said prophecies. I know that's a long intro, but I just want to address some objections you may have or others may have or bring up against this channel or this video series in particular. So without further ado, let's get started with part 2 in our Bible prophecy series. What is the New World Order? So what is the New World Order? It is a one-world government, a one-world economy, and a one-world religion. In this series, we're going to examine in general what exactly each of these topics are and how this one-world order is being built. As you can see, each of these aspects corresponds to passages in Revelation chapter 13. So when this New World Order is fully realized, then the world will see that man of sin, which he is called in the Bible, the Antichrist, lead this global government just prior to the return of the Lord Jesus Christ. And I want us to look at a few scriptures that will help us as we move along in our study. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. In studying this global conspiracy, it's easy to get caught up in trying to figure out exactly who to blame and for what. And there are, as you will see, many groups, secret societies, and individuals involved in working to build this New World Order. However, we need to keep in mind who our real enemy is, and that is the spiritual demonic entities who are led by Satan. Satan is building his kingdom on earth in opposition to the return of the true King, Jesus Christ the Messiah. We also don't want to direct any animosity towards the adherents of the societies and religions discussed here. This is not an attack on the individuals involved in these groups, and if you know anyone who is and you want to share this information with them, it's best to do it in a spirit of truth and love, not forsaking either of these two important principles. Moving on, this is Daniel 12, verse 4. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. This is the time in which we live. We can find out almost anything instantly through our computers and other devices, with an endless amount of information available to us on the internet. In Proverbs 25:2, it is the glory of God to conceal a matter, but the glory of kings is to search out a matter. And this is exactly what we're doing in our series. Okay, Revelation chapter 13, verse 7, the one world government. And authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. So the him in this verse, read in context, refers to the Antichrist, the Satan-appointed ruler of the entire world, approved of by the nations and peoples of the earth. This is why we hear so much about globalism bantered about in the media by world leaders and other proponents of global governance in just about every way imaginable. Now, individually, certain aspects of globalism may not be bad in of themselves and may even be of some benefit to mankind. But this is about having control over each nation, control over all resources, and ultimately control over us and the decisions we make each day. So let's look at a quote from Woodrow Wilson, the 28th President of the United States. Some of the biggest men in the United States in the field of commerce and manufacture are afraid of somebody, are afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive, that they had better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. And interestingly enough, it's quoted from a book of his titled, The Old Order Changeth. So this quote is from George H.W. Bush, 41st President of the United States. Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order, can emerge. A new era, freer from the threat of terror, stronger in the pursuit of justice, and more secure in the quest for peace. This quote comes from a speech he made before a joint session of Congress exactly 11 years prior to the day of the attacks on the World Trade Center towers and the Pentagon. So here's a clip which begins with George H.W. Bush on a separate occasion addressing the nation on live television, again calling for a new world order, followed by other world leaders and politicians doing the same. So let's watch.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
There's a need for a new world order, but it has different characteristics in different parts of the world.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order.
A world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order.
It's about the future of Europe and a new world order.
After 1989, President Bush said, and it's a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a new world order.
And the hope that each of us has to build a new world order.
The pieces are in flux. Soon they will settle again. Before they do, let us reorder this world around us.
So that the problem of the Bush presidency will be the emergence of a new international order.
Within the next 4 years, we will see the emergence of a new international order.
The beginning of a new international order.
But today, with Asia already outproducing Europe, India and China are clearly becoming part of our new order.
So, in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, a new world is emerging. It is a new world order with significantly different and radically new challenges.
I think his task will be to develop an overall strategy for America in this period when really a new world order can be created. It's a great opportunity. It isn't just a crisis.
That this crisis, in the way that has developed, will require some kind of a world governance.
Good evening, everybody. President Obama and British Prime Minister Gordon today calling for a new world order to tackle our global economic crisis.
And the president outlined his vision of a new world order in which the U.S. would participate fully.
We've got to give them a stake in creating the kind of world order that I think all of us would like to see.
So I see a world order in the future with a multipolar world order.
I think a new world order is emerging, and with it the foundations of a new and progressive era of international cooperation. We have resolved that from today we will together manage the process of globalization to secure responsibility from all and fairness to all.
And one of the ways that will drive the change is through global governance and global agreements.
But in a globalized economy, we are going to have to take global responsibilities, and there is going to have to be some semblance of global governance.
Never before has a new world order had to be assembled from so many different perceptions or on so global a scale. Nor has any previous order had to combine the attributes of the historic balance of power system with global democratic opinion and the exploding technology of the contemporary period.
There also exists an extraordinary opportunity to form for the first time in history a truly global society.
Well, during the conflict with Saddam Hussein, which he handled so superbly in a short-term sense, but he kept talking about a new world order. And then President Bush, at the end of that war, promised he would give 4 graduation addresses, 4 commencement addresses, describing that new world order and what America's role was going to be in it. Turned out he gave one of those addresses and canceled the other 3 and talked about something else. That's what, because they weren't ready yet.
That in fact we're all going to have to give up a little bit of our sovereignty in order to make the world work.
And I strongly believe India will be a central actor in the new world order.
And this present window of opportunity during which a truly peaceful and interdependent world order might be built will not be here for too long. Already there are powerful forces at work that threaten to destroy all of our hopes and efforts to erect an enduring structure of global cooperation.
Are you optimistic a global system can happen from what we've heard so far?
It could happen, and in fact it's in the works.
Another quote, this one from former South African President Nelson Mandela. The New World Order that is in the making must focus on the creation of a world democracy, peace and prosperity for all. And we also have some quotes from past popes as well as the current pope. This one is from Pope Benedict XVI. In an article titled, Pope Urges Today's Wise Men to Shape a World Based on Christ, John Thavis wrote, Pope Benedict said the age of globalization is challenging political, scientific, and religious leaders to shape a new world order based on spiritual values. This is from Pope Francis. It comes from an article titled, Pope Francis Warns of Destruction of Earth's Ecosystem in Leaked Encyclical. Francis also called for a new global political authority. His appeal echoed that of his predecessor, Pope Benedict XVI, who in a 2009 encyclical proposed a kind of super UN to deal with the world's economic problems and injustices. UN referring to United Nations, which we'll look at in just a minute. And Pope Francis, again, this is a quote from one of his own encyclical letters. As Benedict XVI has affirmed in continuity with the social teaching of the Church, there is urgent need of a true world political authority, as my predecessor, Blessed John XXIII, indicated some years ago. And lastly, from Pope John Paul II. More than ever, we need a new international order that draws on the experience and results achieved in these years by the United Nations. So let's take a look at this experience and results achieved by the United Nations to which he refers to. And here is the United Nations logo, not surprisingly, with a target centered over a flattened out image of the Earth. So what is the goal of the United Nations? According to famous ocean explorer and scientist Jacques Cousteau, quote, "The United Nations goal is to reduce population selectively by encouraging abortion, forced sterilization, and control human reproduction, and regards 2/3 of the human population as excess baggage, with 350,000 people to be eliminated per day. It's terrible to have to say this. World population must be stabilized, and to do that we have to eliminate 350,000 people per day. In 1 year, that would equal 128 million people." Here's a statue on the grounds of the United Nations buildings in New York City. What purpose does this statue serve? Does it represent ending all conflicts between nations with peace and harmony for the world? Or is it to disarm the populace of their right to protect themselves from criminal activity or government tyranny? Are there any other legitimate reasons to portray a revolver with a knot tied in the barrel? And I find it strange. How many nations, militaries, especially those members of the UN, still use revolvers? Anyway, moving along, John D. Rockefeller Jr. donated the land for the United Nations headquarters in New York City. So let's take a closer look at Mr. Rockefeller. This quote is from former Democratic Congressman Larry P. McDonald. "The drive of the Rockefellers and their allies is to create a one-world government combining super-capitalism and communism under the same tent, all under their control. Do I mean a conspiracy? Yes, I do. I am convinced there is such a plot, international in scope, generations old in planning, incredibly evil in intent." Here is John D. Rockefeller, patriarch of the Rockefeller family. Now, the Rockefellers are considered by many to be philanthropists, but what is this money actually used for? Here's a quote from author, and you can read it. I can't pronounce his name, so we'll just roll with it. "Rockefeller money has been used in various ways to forward social and global control through economics, foundations, the United Nations, universities, banking, industry, medicine, and of course education, psychology, and psychiatry." So we've looked at quotes from two sources that have not painted the Rockefeller family in the best light. But what do they believe about themselves and the activities they are involved in? Let's take a look at David Rockefeller, son of John D. Rockefeller Jr. David Rockefeller, who was also chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations as well as founder of the Trilateral Commission, and these are two other groups we'll be examining later. So this is a quote from his autobiography, Memoirs. "Some even believe we, that is, the Rockefeller family, are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists, and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure, one world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty and I am proud of it." I don't think it could be put more plainly than that. And we're going to end this video with a quote from the famous American newscaster Walter Cronkite. In 1999, Walter Cronkite appeared at the United Nations to accept the Norman Cousins Global Governance Award from the World Federalist Association. He told those assembled, including Hillary Rodham Clinton, that the first step toward achieving a world government, his personal dream, is to strengthen the United Nations. Quote, "We must strengthen the United Nations as a first step toward a world government. To do that, of course, we Americans will have to yield up some of our sovereignty. That would be a bitter pill. It would take a lot of courage, a lot of faith in the new order. Pat Robertson has written in a book a few years ago that we should have a world government, but only when the Messiah arrives. He wrote literally, any attempt to achieve world order before that time must be the work of the devil. Well, join me. I'm glad to sit here at the right hand of Satan. Now remember, we saw earlier Ephesians 6:12 and explained that this is a spiritual battle and we are involved in spiritual warfare, with Satan building his kingdom in opposition to Jesus Christ. The United Nations and those who support it, whether they know it or not, are helping to build this one world order. In Part 3, we'll be looking at other organizations whose goals are also in accordance and congruent with the United Nations' desire for global governments. So until then, thanks for watching and keep examining.